All right. My final presentation topic is human emotion and Greek New Wave cinema. My name is Evan Tyler, and this is my Film 300 final. So the film that I decided to research was called Attenberg. It was directed by Athena Rachel Tsangari in 2010. It follows Marina, a 23-year-old woman that struggles with social anxiety, and she goes through a emotional transformation while she is dealing with the impending death of her father, who is going through terminal cancer and going through chemo and whatnot. And this film is really interesting. It follows themes of isolation and emotion, sexual identity and grief, and how they're all tied together, and how they're all tied together through Marina's journey. So the first theme that really stands out in this film is isolation and emotion. To begin this film, Marina is a person that is just emotionally detached from the rest of her community and society. She really stays in her own shell and doesn't really interact with anyone besides the people that she drives around for her job, her best friend Bella, and her father, who she is very close with. A symbol of isolation in this film is the setting that it takes place in. She lives in a coastal Greek town or city, small city, and it's really not what you think about when you think of coastal city in Greece. You think about the Mykonos or these beaches and these beautiful homes. It's not like that at all. It's very barren. There's not a lot of activity going on. You got to remember, this film was created in the wake of the 2009 Greek recession. So the economy was affected terribly during this time in Greece. And that is reflected in this film. Her best friend Bella is the one who really starts to be like the catalyst for her getting out of her comfort zone and exploring these emotions that she's trying to feel. She's able to form a connection with a new character that is introduced called the Engineer. Uh, and I'll discuss more about how their connection started later in this presentation. But that is one of the people that she is really able to connect with, form a bond with. And the death of her father finally forces her to face these emotions that she's building head on, and these emotions that she's been feeling throughout this process of him going through chemo and finding out the cancer is terminal. And I'll go more into that and how it ties into emotion later in this presentation. But that's kind of the starting base for what this film, like the message this film is trying to bring upon. The next theme, which is very important throughout this film, is sexual identity. Along with being just emotionally detached, Marina's never been able to form a connection with someone to where she feels comfortable exploring her sexuality with them. Again, Marina is pushed by Bella, who is a very sex positive person, to explore her sexual identity more and discover what she really likes. Marina and Bella often converse about Bella's past experiences because Bella is someone who is very sexually active. She has a lot of experience when it comes to these things. And Marina is often asking her questions about things that Bella likes, things that Bella has gone and done with other people. And that really sparks where Marina is going to try to feel these things for herself. Her relationship with the engineer begins as a physical relationship where Bella is kind of not using him, but experimenting with him to see what she does like and doesn't like. And eventually through this physical connection, it evolves into an emotional one, which always or clearly ties the theme of sexual identity into the theme of emotion in this film. Marina's sexuality also makes a political statement in a way. Throughout this film, her and Bella often talk about uh, their sexual activity, but Bella is willing to let Marina uh, talk to her, obviously, but also kiss her and touch her to see if Marina actually does like women, maybe instead of men. And this sends a message that in this town where this film is taking place, it's a very traditional town, very conservative town, and her fluid sexuality wouldn't really fit into the social norms of a town like this. You got to remember, this film was made in 2010, so almost 15 years ago, and we're still having conversations about these things today. So this kind of serves as a symbol of how sexuality transcends social and political beliefs that we have. You may think something is right and something is wrong, but the human sexuality kind of transcends one's beliefs. And the final, and maybe the most important theme throughout this film is grief. Obviously, throughout the whole film, Marina's father is dying. So she begins this grieving process probably before we see her story start. At the beginning of her grieving process, Marina is just completely emotionally detached from the situation. She doesn't really want to face these emotions that she knows are impending, like head on. She kind of just wants to run from them and hide from them. But as she begins to gather this emotional capacity through her talks with Bella and her connection with the engineer, she's finally beginning to start the grieving process, and she is able to face them in a more appropriate way. Obviously, hiding from your emotions in the wake of losing a loved one is not a healthy thing to do. Repressing those things can really build up in a person and cause all sorts of problems. So she's able to deal with this in a more appropriate and healthy way. And then her father's death was really an emotional crossroads for her. She was finally able to take something like this on emotionally, but now she was really going through it and getting tested about it. Her grieving process, highs that are very high, remembering who her father was. Her father throughout this film was a very pragmatic and realistic person. He really saw the world as what it is. He knew that he had terminal cancer, and even though that was his fate, it really never changed who he was. And I think Marina really took on this mindset of her own. Life is obviously, your time on earth is finite, and it's to Marina, it seemed like she was wasting her life away, being this emotionally empty person and really just sticking to herself and not making any effort to meet people or form new connections. But yeah, her grieving process also had moments of weakness and vulnerability. She was uncontrollable at sometimes, which is completely normal for losing someone as close as her father was. And according to Hofstede, actually, this is a common way for a Greek person to mourn a loved one. They go through very high highs and very low lows. So this is kind of a reflection of Greek culture in a way, the way that she grieved her father's death. And then to wrap up, this was one of the first films of Greek New Wave cinema, which began right after the Greek recession, which happened in 2009. So it's a very strong reflection of how life was like in the wake of this recession, which just decimated the Greek economy. And it really gives an outsider a view into what their culture was like. It's obviously a very powerful film connecting these human emotions, which everyone goes through throughout their lives. So, and I think it offers kind of uh maybe a blanket or a net of safety to someone that is going through maybe something similar like this, or maybe they're having trouble opening up emotionally to someone, or they're grieving a loved one. How maybe someone in a different country on the other side of the world than you is feeling these same things. That these feelings are universal for everyone to feel and not just you. And then it leaves a legacy of social change that was happening in Greece. Obviously, I mentioned the Greek recession, but during this period, a lot of things in Greece were changing. People were becoming more open-minded. They were obviously open to new ideas, and obviously, Marina, in a way, this film was ahead of its time, especially the sexual identity part of it. This is obviously something that is very talked about in society in America, but also across the world. This and this film offers like a look back in time at what it was like 15 years ago and how that compares to today. And then this is my bibliography. And if anyone has any questions, this is my email. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about this film or talk about it more in depth. And thank you for listening to my presentation.